The ancient Japanese way to unbreakable focus, Senshin-do, there is a silent crisis happening inside all of us, one we rarely talk about openly but feel every single day. Our minds are overwhelmed. Our attention is scattered. We struggle to sit still, to think clearly, to work deeply. We jump from one distraction to the next, like a mind that has forgotten how to inhabit a single moment. And this is strange, because deep down, we know that real power comes from focus. Every great achievement, every breakthrough, every transformation in history has come from a mind able to hold its attention on a single purpose long enough to bend reality around it. Yet most of us can't focus for more than a few seconds without reaching for something to numb the discomfort. Why? Because focus is not a natural state anymore. It is a lost art. And that is why Senshin-do, the ancient Japanese path of purifying the mind, is more relevant today than at any point in human history. Imagine waking up tomorrow with a mind as sharp as a sword, a mind that cuts through noise, doubt, and distraction with the calm clarity of a Zen archer drawing his bow. Imagine being able to direct your attention completely, effortlessly onto whatever matters: your work, your craft, your training, your goals, without the internal chaos that constantly pulls you away. What would your life look like? How different would your results be? How different would you be? Senshin-do is not about forcing discipline through willpower. It is about transforming the inner landscape of your mind so deeply that focus becomes your natural state.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But before we explore that path, we need to understand a paradox. We think our problem is distraction, but our real problem is fear. We don't lose focus because the world is noisy, we lose focus because the silence within us is terrifying. When you sit alone to concentrate, your mind doesn't just wander randomly. It wanders toward your fears, your unresolved emotions, your insecurities, your doubts, your unfinished business. Focus forces you to confront the parts of yourself you try to avoid with constant stimulation. And this is where the philosophical journey begins. Senshin-do doesn't teach you how to focus as much as it teaches you why you cannot. Let me ask you a question you might not want to answer. When you fail to focus, what are you really trying to escape? Because if you understood that clearly, your entire life would shift. The ancient Japanese believed that the mind is like a lake. When disturbed, it becomes cloudy, chaotic, impossible to see through. But when purified, when the waves are calmed, the debris removed, it reflects reality perfectly. In that calmness, focus is effortless, not forced. The problem is that most of us try to force focus onto a mind that is full of turbulence. We sit down to work while carrying unresolved emotions, hidden anxieties, inner noise, subconscious clutter. Our lake is a storm and we expect stillness on command. Senshin-do teaches that focus isn't an action, it's a state of being. You don't try to focus. You become someone for whom focus is natural because the mind has been purified from within. And the purification begins with a truth few people are willing to face. Your inability to concentrate is a mirror of your internal fragmentation. The distractions around you are not the cause, they're the symptoms. You get distracted because your mind is not unified. So let's ask another uncomfortable question. If every distraction disappeared from your environment, would your mind still find a way to escape the present moment? If the answer is yes, then the work ahead of us is not about productivity, not about motivation, not about efficiency. It is about understanding the architecture of attention itself. Senshin-do teaches that the mind is divided into three layers: the wandering mind, which reacts; the disciplined mind, which chooses; and the purified mind, which simply is. Most people live entirely in the wandering mind, pulled around by impulses, notifications, cravings, emotional turbulence, and fleeting thoughts. A rare few cultivate the disciplined mind, the mind that can choose what to focus on. But an even rarer few walk the path of the purified mind, the Senshin mind, where thoughts arise without controlling them, where emotions flow without hijacking attention, where the present moment becomes the only reality. This is not mystical. It is deeply practical. The wandering mind is driven by unprocessed emotions. The disciplined mind is driven by intention. The purified mind is driven by clarity. And clarity is the ultimate origin of unbreakable focus. But here is the real dilemma. We think clarity comes from thinking more, but it actually comes from thinking less. Not in the sense of being thoughtless, but in the sense of removing the noise that blocks your deeper intelligence. Senshin-do teaches that your mind already knows how to concentrate. You were born with that ability. Watch a child building something they love. Their focus is absolute, pure, unbroken. They are not fighting themselves. They are not doubting themselves. They are not negotiating with themselves. They are simply present. So what happened to us? Life layered noise over our natural clarity. So before we dive deeper into the techniques, before we explore the rituals and the philosophy, ask yourself this. If your focus was restored to its purest form, what version of your life would become possible? How the Japanese purified the mind before they sharpened the sword. To understand Senshin-do, we must step into a world where the mind was treated with as much seriousness as a blade. In ancient Japan, warriors, monks, and craftsmen believed something modern society has forgotten. A distracted mind is more dangerous than a dull sword. You can sharpen steel 1,000 times, but if the person wielding it is unfocused, impulsive, or clouded by emotion, the blade becomes an instrument of chaos rather than mastery. This is why the purification of the mind Senshin always came before the sharpening of the body, the skill, or the weapon. The warrior was taught that the enemy was not outside of him. The first enemy was within, and it had to be defeated before any external battle could be won. Imagine a samurai entering battle with rage in his chest, doubt in his mind, and panic in his breath. He would die not because his technique was bad, but because his inner world betrayed him. The ancient Japanese believed that the body cannot move with precision until the mind becomes clear. And this clarity wasn't just philosophical, it was practical. A single moment of hesitation could mean death. The samurai trained their minds through ritual, silence, stillness, repetition, breath, and brutal honesty with their own fears. Senshin-do asks us the same question they asked themselves. How can we conquer the world when we cannot conquer our thoughts? Let's take a moment and reflect on your own mind. How often do you hesitate because of fear, overthink because of doubt, distract yourself because of discomfort, or sabotage yourself because your inner world is disorganized? How many battles have you lost not because you were unskilled, but because you were unfocused? Modern life may not involve physical blades, but our battles are equally real, fighting for our goals, our dreams, our attention, our sanity. And just like the samurai, we lose not against the world, but against the noise inside us. So how did the Japanese purify the mind? Senshin-do has many teachings, but it begins with one truth. The mind must be emptied before it can be focused. Not emptied in the sense of becoming blank, but emptied of unnecessary attachments, resentment, fear, overstimulation, clutter, emotional residue. The ancient phrase Mizu no kokoro, the mind like water, captures this perfectly. Water reflects clearly when still, becomes cloudy when disturbed, and flows effortlessly when unblocked. The mind is no different. When disturbed by emotional chaos, it becomes unfocused. When blocked by overthinking, it becomes stagnant. When purified, it becomes powerful. To practice Senshin-do, warriors would begin with stillness. They understood something modern science now confirms. When the mind stops moving, the nervous system realigns, the breath deepens, and attention sharpens. In stillness, you confront your thoughts the same way a samurai confronts his opponent, directly, without running away. Stillness reveals what is stealing your focus. It forces you to face the truth. Distractions don't come from the world, they come from the mind's inability to sit with itself. Then came breath. Breath was not just a physiological tool, it was a spiritual weapon. Long, slow breaths signal safety to the brain, calming the amygdala and restoring clarity. Short, panicked breaths signal danger. So the warrior learned to command his breath even in chaos, because controlling the breath meant controlling the mind, and controlling the mind meant controlling the outcome. Next came repetition. Warriors practiced the same movements thousands of times, not because they loved monotony, but because repetition quiets the mind. When the body knows what to do without conscious thought, the mind can remain completely present. This is why craftsmen, martial artists, and monks all practiced endless repetition. It washes away mental noise. Modern people avoid repetition because it feels boring. But boredom is not an obstacle, it is the doorway to mastery. Boredom appears when the wandering mind resists stillness. But once you push through it, clarity emerges like a blade rising from water. But there is a deeper principle behind all of this, one that Senshin-do masters understood intuitively. You cannot focus until you remove what fractures your attention. Focus is not created through effort, it is revealed through purification. And purification is painful because it requires confronting the truth about how you create your own distractions. Let me ask you something that may make you uneasy. What emotion, unresolved issue, or hidden insecurity inside you is stealing your focus? Because if you don't identify it, no productivity trick, no habit system, and no motivation will ever save you. The samurai purified themselves before battle because a single unresolved fear could cost them their life. For us, unresolved emotions cost us our dreams. Senshin-do is the art of clearing the mental battlefield before stepping onto it. In the next part, we go deeper into the heart of this path, how Senshin-do transforms pain, fear, and emotional turmoil into laser-focused presence, and why mastering this skill makes you unstoppable in a distracted world. How Senshin-do turns emotional turmoil into laser-focused presence. At some point in your life, you've probably wondered why your mind becomes the loudest exactly when you need it to be quiet. Why the moment you sit down to work, you remember every unresolved issue you tried to bury. Why the moment you try to relax, your thoughts start racing. Why the moment you need clarity, confusion floods in. This isn't an accident. This is the mind revealing its disorder. Senshin-do teaches that emotional turbulence doesn't randomly disrupt focus, it exposes the parts of your mind that have not yet been purified. And instead of escaping from those emotions or fighting them, the ancient Japanese learned to transform them into fuel. Pain, fear, doubt, and anxiety are not obstacles to focus. They are raw energy waiting to be redirected. Imagine a river overflowing. If it has no channel, it floods and destroys. But if guided, it becomes power-turning wheels, feeding fields, shaping landscapes. The same is true of the emotions inside you. When left unchanneled, they scatter your attention. But when directed, they sharpen it into something fierce. Senshin-do is not a philosophy of suppression. It is a philosophy of transformation. It teaches you to take the very things that make your mind chaotic and alchemize them into concentration. Let's start with pain. When you're hurting emotionally, disappointment, heartbreak, failure, your mind loses discipline. Joe spiral. You overthink. You numb yourself. But pain has a hidden quality. It demands presence. It forces you into the moment because it is too intense to ignore. That intensity can be destructive if you let it scatter your mind. But if you breathe into it, observe it, sit with it without trying to run, something shifts. Pain becomes awareness. Awareness becomes stillness. Stillness becomes clarity. And from clarity, focus arises naturally. The Japanese understood that sitting with pain is not suffering, it is purifying. It burns away illusions, ego, emotional debris. Many people fail to focus because they've never learned to feel their pain long enough to discover what it's trying to teach. Now consider fear. Fear is the most powerful scatterer of attention. It fractures the mind into 1,000 scenarios, 1,000 future catastrophes, 1,000 imagined outcomes. But Senshin-do teaches that fear can also be the ultimate gateway into focus. When a samurai faced the possibility of death, fear wasn't suppressed. It was harnessed. Fear awakened every sense. Fear slowed time. Fear brought the warrior fully into the present because survival depended on it. You have felt this too, those moments when adrenaline heightens everything, when the world becomes sharper, when your awareness expands. The difference is that most people enter that state only by accident. Senshin-do teaches you to enter it by choice. Fear becomes your ally when you stop interpreting it as danger and start interpreting it as awakening. Then there's doubt. Doubt is the mind's internal fog. It makes you hesitate. It makes you procrastinate. It makes you question your path so much that you stop walking it. But doubt is also a signpost. It appears not to weaken you, but to show you the places in your life where your identity hasn't solidified yet. A wandering mind doubts because it lacks self-trust. A purified mind doubts only to refine. Doubt becomes destructive when you use it as an excuse not to act. But it becomes powerful when you use it as an opportunity to clarify your next step. The samurai didn't fear doubt, they interrogated it. They held doubt up to the light, studied it, understood it, then acted despite it. That is focus, not the absence of doubt, but the ability to move through it with precision. And finally, there is anxiety. Modern society has labeled anxiety as purely negative, but Senshin-do views it differently. Anxiety is excess mental energy with no direction. It is the mind overflowing. But if you guide that energy through breath, through intention, through repetitive action, through stillness, you can transform anxiety into momentum. The Japanese craftsmen, archers, and monks understood this intuitively. They took nervous energy and funneled it into repetitive practice until the nerves dissolved into presence. Anxiety became power only when the mind stopped wrestling with it and started channeling it. The truth is, your emotional turmoil is not the enemy of your focus. It is the raw material of your focus. The more emotional intensity you have inside you, the more potential you have if you learn to direct it. The unfocused mind tries to escape emotions. The disciplined mind tries to control emotions. But the purified mind, the Senshin mind, absorbs emotions, listens to them, transforms them, and then uses them to pierce through the moment with unmatched clarity. Let me ask you a question that may reveal something important about yourself. What would happen to your life if every strong emotion you felt, pain, fear, doubt, anxiety, became a trigger for deeper focus instead of deeper distraction? If you can answer that honestly, you can see the path ahead. In the final part, we will explore how to apply Senshin-do in the modern world, how to build a mind so clear, so trained, and so grounded that no chaos, pressure, or distraction can break your focus. How to train an unbreakable modern mind through Senshin-do. If Senshin-do were only a beautiful ancient philosophy, it would be interesting but useless. Its power comes from its practicality. The warriors, monks, and craftsmen who lived by it weren't sitting in temples reading poetry about clarity. They were applying it to life or death situations, to craftsmanship that required perfection, to daily rituals that demanded presence. And if they could build unbreakable focus under the pressures of battle, responsibility, and survival, then we can absolutely build it in the modern world where the battles are internal, the weapons are digital, and the enemy is distraction. Senshin-do isn't outdated, it is urgently needed. Because today, the average person isn't suffering from lack of intelligence or lack of potential, they're suffering from a mind that has been hijacked by noise. So how do we apply Senshin-do now? How do we purify the mind the way the ancient Japanese did, not symbolically, but functionally, so that our focus becomes unbreakable? It begins with a single shift, reclaiming your mind from the external world. Most people don't realize how much of their mental energy is being pulled outward every minute. Notifications, messages, opinions, comparisons, expectations, stimulation. It's like trying to study while hundreds of people whisper in your ear. Senshin-do teaches that the first act of purification is withdrawal. Not withdrawal from life, but withdrawal from being mentally available to everything. In ancient Japan, the warrior would retreat into silence before a mission. The archer would close his eyes before releasing the arrow. The monk would breathe before speaking. These were not rituals of superstition, they were acts of reclaiming the mind. In the modern world, reclaiming your mind means intentionally reducing the amount of stimulus you allow into your consciousness. It means choosing silence before scrolls, intention before reaction, clarity before consumption. The second practice is what the Japanese called emptying the cup. You cannot pour focus into a mind that is already full. Every morning before diving into tasks, you need a moment, just one, to empty yourself. This could be deep breathing, journaling, meditation, stillness, a slow walk, a minute of quiet. What matters is not the method, but the release. You let your mind settle. You let the debris float to the surface. You acknowledge your emotional turbulence before it hijacks your whole day. The ancient Japanese believed that a person who begins the day in chaos will spend the entire day in reaction. But the person who begins the day in stillness will act with precision. Ask yourself, when was the last time you started a day by preparing your mind instead of preparing your schedule? The third practice is presence in small actions. Senshin-do teaches that mastery comes from devotion, not intensity. Washing your hands with full attention, making tea with full awareness, walking with full breath, speaking with full intention. When you bring presence into everyday actions, you strengthen the muscle of attention. You teach your brain what it means to stay in the moment. Think of it like weightlifting. Every small act of presence is a repetition building the strength of your focus. If you cannot be present while pouring water, how can you be present while building your life's work? The ancient Japanese believed that presence is not something you turn on, it is something you practice until it becomes the only way you operate. Then comes the fourth practice, uniting breath and intention. When your breath aligns with your purpose, your body and mind unify. When your breath is scattered, your mind is scattered. During intense focused studying, creating, training, performing, you must breathe slowly, deeply, rhythmically. This is not a wellness cliché. Controlled breathing sends signals to your brain that you are safe, grounded, and capable of concentration. Warriors use this to steady their aim. Monks used it to steady their awareness. You can use it to steady your focus. The breath is the bridge between chaos and clarity. But the final, most powerful practice of Senshin-do is the one that transforms your entire identity, choosing one purpose at a time. Modern society glorifies multitasking, but multitasking is simply the wandering mind in disguise. True mastery is monotasking. The samurai had one opponent. The archer had one target. The craftsman had one stroke of the blade. You, too, must learn to face one task like it is the only task that exists. Senshin-do teaches that the mind becomes unbreakable when it is trained to give its entire being to the present action. Once you learn to do one thing with total presence, you gain the capacity to do anything with total presence. So let me ask you a question that reveals your entire relationship with focus. When was the last time you did a single thing, one thing, without allowing your mind to fracture into 1,000 pieces? This question matters because your life's potential depends on your ability to answer it honestly. And here is the final revelation Senshin-do offers. You don't need a new mind, you need a purified mind. A mind returned to its natural clarity. A mind that cuts through distraction like a blade through bamboo. A mind that stands firm in storms. A mind that acts without hesitation. A mind that sees without distortion. A mind that can focus on one purpose so deeply that reality itself seems to bend around it. Because the truth is, you already possess the ability for unbreakable focus. Senshin-do simply removes everything that hides it. What would your life become if your mind returned to that state? That is where your next chapter begins.